Hello there, it's Terry Bell from Bell& Company here, our continuing series of webinars where we're giving our insight into where the economy is, especially for our friends in business and particularly SMEs. So we're going to wait for a few more people here to join us. I'm going to push this door too, sorry, because somebody in the other room's being a bit noisy with their phone. Excuse me for that. So yes, this is part of a two-part series that we're doing here. We're doing a little bit of follow-up where we're looking at business viability and the date to be given at the end of the slides here. And on the business viability thing, it's not patronizing in a sense, have you got a viable business? We're trying to reconfigure that, if you like, with today's world and what we see. All the comments in here are my opinions. I try not to offend anybody. If I do, I might upset some of our loan broker friends in this one because I'm just putting a bit of something out there in terms of peer-to-peer groups. But it's my opinion. Not meant to be offensive, but I'm trying to give you where we think we are. And we're a decent bellwether, I suggest. We keep ourselves up to speed what's going on out there, and we're getting 5 inquiries a day at the minute. So we like to think we're at the front and where the trends are going. So we'll start in a minute. I'm Terry Bell. There's going to be my details at the end. This is an informative, bit presumptuous, informative webinar. Any feedback, my email address is at the end, and if you want to give us a call, by all means do. We're not looking to procure business. People want help, by all means we'll take them all, but that isn't the purpose of this. If I get something materially wrong, I'm sure some our learned friends will tell me. So good afternoon to you all, and we'll get going. Hi there, Terry Bell here from Bell & Company. Today's webinar, business in today's world, business debt in today's world, when the music stops. Bit of a fancy title we came up with there. I'm just going to run through quickly what we're going to cover today. It's part of a two-series delivery of webinars. Second one bit looking at business viability in today's world. So we've got our introduction and contents there. Why the title? Right. We're in a situation brilliantly where we're coming out of lockdown 3. We would appear to have vaccinations flying in the UK for whatever cock-ups have been made on the way. We've brilliantly recovered from there, and we're opening up again. And there's that hideous thing, what is going to be the new normal, but definitely there's going to be a recalibration of the economy and all the various industries they're in and markets. The music has stopped. We're back to reality. Rishi, our good friend there, will start to take away more and more of the cover that we have there. And reality, as we say, there is going to strike. Okay, and that's going to be the ability to hide has gone. A lot of business people have been able to hide. If there were problems before, everything stopped, the courts stopped, etc. Brief look at consumer surge. We get a lot of I believe, hot air there. There will be a surge, but it's how relative or otherwise. Key to this webinar is looking at the styles of debt. And the reason we're bringing that up, the types of debt for SMEs, is it will explain when we go to the toxic mix and what can happen and what we're finding. It's the mix of the current world debt, which is going to be the issue potentially for SMEs under pressure. Then our creditors' positions, and I put bless them there because they've been essentially stuck, again, by Rishi's Coronavirus Act, preventing landlords doing whatever they really wanted to do, and also where courts are sort of in the mainstream to a halt. Then we're just going to do a little bit of Mystic Megs, one for the older people there. Mystic Meg used to predict the future. We're looking at what we see as a 3-stage development, in inverted commas, of the economy. So we've got the fabricated surge. We think there's going to be pressure to bear in early 2022. And the I word is inflation. Everybody's going on about it. And we're going to go into a little bit of depth on that and why that will come. And again, it's something we need to be aware of. So even if we've got it in our head, our business model, we're ready to react and incorporate that there rather than in a retrospective way. And as we say, the next webinar is going to be, is your business viable? Is your business model viable as is? Not patronizing in any sense, but it's the number, as we just quickly discussed, the number of variables that will come into play. So we'll kick off. Why the title? As we said, brilliantly out of lockdown 3, vaccinations, brilliantly well done by, I can't remember the gentleman's name, whoever the government official is, well administered. I've had my first jab as of today, and we're in Northern Ireland. They're tearing through it. I think they're ahead of England. Great things been. So we're opening up, okay? But what are we opening up to? That's the key. We look at still, I'm looking this way because there's a bar there, and they're running at about 40% capacity at most. That's before the heavens open every other hour or whatever the great English UK weather brings. So we're opening up. That's great. But where are we going to pitch here? Where are our finances going to be and everything? So we've got a previous financial pre-COVID, whatever we did in and out of lockdown, and now we're off. So as we say, their reality dawns. I walked past a shop in Belfast the other day, and a major chain, just prior to opening, it must have been about an inch thick with letters. That's reality dawning. A number of businesses will be going back, pushing the door back. It's all the lovely reminders from the Inland Revenue. Right? So we quickly got to get back to reality as well. The support is undoubtedly reducing, and it has to at some point. We can't keep paying this forever. It was a very good piece of work, I think, by the government, not a political statement, in terms of how quickly they adopted furlough and the sibbles and bibbles. Something that we dealt with in a previous webinar a couple of weeks ago, that they helped sort of iron out the peaks and troughs that were going at the time. Furlough is going, although there was a couple of mutterings today about its continuation. Sibbles and bibbles are kicking in, and everything's been okay so far, but it's, again, the support's going, and it's how quickly the government, especially Rishi, can wean us off, because he's still got this 350 500 billion, whatever the number is, 500 billion debt to pay. It's just way down the track and crazy numbers, but that's where we are. So then it's a case of what's the new normal? Hideous cliche I don't like, but let's apply it here in terms of business, and what will it look like? I was speaking to a restaurateur the other day. He breaks even at 80% of his capacity. He's on 60% at the minute, so he's actually still losing money, but feels obligated to open, so that he keeps his staff in training, knife skills, etc. in this restaurant he was talking about. Flip side of it is that can't go on forever. Will he go through his 80% level he needs to then make very good profits, but he's still got to get back to 80% in his current business model, thus the viability aspect. There are good times, there are bad times. Businesses have flourished. There's a couple of businesses we know in Northern Ireland, some friends of mine, are absolutely flying. But there is still the bad ones there. The retail, we're still finding units closing in the high street there. In 12, 15 months, it's amazing what's happened to the economy. We're quickly going to mention Amazon there, because the government are talking about we've got loads of money in our pocket, so we've done nothing. But according to my at least daily Amazon delivery, I'd suggest we carried on spending. In all of this as well, we're very careful. It's a mindset that we generally have at that company. Still got to be positive. This isn't to go, oh, the end of the world is nigh, or everything's crap, it's going to be terrible. We've got to be positive. We've got to drive through this. We're good. Human beings are strong. They're not weak. Coupled with that, we're a brilliant business economy, and we have to keep that driven. So there's that side, mixed with a little bit of a sprinkle of reality and some bad times. It comes in anyway. From the last crash, we've been busy right the way through. So that's 10 years hence. So it's not like things quickly come and go. Things still go wrong. But at the moment, we're on the edge of what we think is quite a meteoric change in terms of the way business carries on. So to our end, we've had the support and everything else, and the music has stopped. So as we open up, reality strikes. So where are we when we do open? We're coming out the caves, can't see for the sunshine and everything else. And here we go, right? There are two brilliant indices to use here. And the simplest things in the world. We've got figures pouring out of the Bank of England and everywhere else. And all the people that haven't worked in their lives are saying this, are all experts, etc. Two simple measures. One, an image I've put on the slide here, is I stole from Instagram yesterday, and it's called the Pret-a-Manger Index. And that is purely following Pret-a-Manger's turnover levels against the figures at the end of 2019. At the moment, that only stands at 39%, suggesting only 39% of office workers typically are going back to work full time. If we take that a little bit further, if we adopt some element of working from home, be it one day, and I think it'll be more than that, then obviously it looks like it will only go to 80%, 4 days of your 5-day week. The other one is the economist in the Sunday Times, David Smith, who's a very good writer. He always uses a skip index, and that is based on purely the number of skips he sees on a 3-mile walk, I think he does, to check out his local area. And so sometimes you get all the inflowing figures of what's going to be here. Transport for London are coming up with this figure. Any form of rail service is going to be this. We're going to be slower, and it's trying to keep pitched on that, especially with our towns and cities that we've developed into an amazing hospitality sectors. You know, I managed to get out for a couple of bites to eat. Not brilliant when you have to sit there in the rain, but it's going to take us a while to get all of that back. So that's what we're talking about, the Pret-a-Manger Index and the Skip Index, stolen from David Smith at the Times. Then we're looking at legacy debt incurred. Now, that's going to take a couple of forms. Yes, Sybils and Sybils who may have availed of, and in the main, they should be okay because the interest rates and the term that Rishi says that we can extend them to should make those within reason bearable. But when I talk about legacy debt, it's things like the ability to defer old VAT, PAY, etc., with our friends at the HMRC. Also, if we stopped and our suppliers worked with us and very adaptable, then that's still there. We've got any other things, rent, any number of people that we're getting inquiries from. Suddenly the landlords are stepping up their actions. We've got a historic way of working versus modern forms going forward. The only way I can see retail and possibly central London, central city retail working is with turnover rents. It's got to be a two-way street here. So there's legacy debt there, and Luke Johnson, again, the guy that who set up Pizza Express and cocked up Valerie Patisserie, a good column in the Sunday Times nonetheless, and he was talking in the vernacular, a phrase I've used before, in terms of up to COVID, there were companies with pre-existing conditions. To all intents and purposes, they're goosed. They really are going to struggle to recover from where they are. So there's that legacy debt before any effect of COVID and or wherever the economy goes in terms of its surge or otherwise. So it's a little bit of a, back to the phrase we used a few times, a little bit of a toxic mix going here. We've used it at Bell & Company slightly differently. So we're okay. We've been busy. We know and think, unfortunately, there's going to be a surge in terms of what we do, but we've used it as a thing to start again. So we've gone back and revisited everything we do. There's a shop in Harrogate here where a brilliant click and collect facility, small shop, brilliantly the way they've done it. And it's a bit like starting again. It's quite refreshing. We've adopted it in another brand that we have, EU Property Solutions, because people, it's not a problem at the minute for them. If they've got a crappy holiday home in Spain, it's not their big issue. So we've had to reinvent, horrible cliche again, ourselves and start again. And in a way, strange way, I think it's quite healthy. It's that ability to sit down. I've used the example a number of times. If you're an old school solicitor, no abuse to our old friends, the solicitors, if they just think they're going to open the door again, polish the brass plaque and go, right, I'm here for business, ain't going to happen. The world was changing massively prior to COVID and now is immensely different. So that's, again, why we're going to be looking at, in the next webinar, is your business viable? We're going to do a couple of practical examples on there. It's how we see things should be looked at differently. You have to have a different income streams. We've added, whilst we've been in COVID, 2 income streams, for instance. Not massive, but it gives another contribution and something we can develop. So that model, old business model, I do this and only that, you're up to a lot of grief, I think, going forward. Change is essential. Absolutely change. Trendy phrase was pivot. That was used right the way through. You pivot, you change, you dump, the shop, your takeaway suddenly, or your click and collect, and you're massively online. You're opening a shop online, you're doing Shopify, you're huge on eBay, you clear all your stock, anything and everything you've got to consider. Every professional organization has to change, be it accountants, solicitors, surveyors. We've got to look at things a whole lot different going forward. So change is essential. Then, in terms of opening up reality, I you might not believe this, I talk quite a bit, but what I have been doing is talking to a lot of businesses, just in conversation, not plugging them for info. But I was talking to a very high volume public house owner in Belfast there, and he's looking at this, which we're going to go on to in a minute, in terms of consumer habits. So he was saying, for instance, he most likely had about 8 old fellas that used to go in the pub every day for 5 days and drink 10 pints and spend 40, 50 quid every day. He said, they won't be, it's little things. They won't be able to drink 10 pints. He said, they drink 5 pints to start fighting. That's going to change. You're not going to get it 3 deep at the bar again. People are very conscious of their environment, where they've got to stand, what they've got to do. All very strange little nuances there, which are going to change it. And then another good indicator, along with the Pret-a-Manger index, which I refer to here, is the city centre dry cleaners. And again, there's a guy who helps me with my dry cleaner, brilliant guy, and if you know him, Belfast Raj, he was saying, right, slowly. He's got his fingers on the pulse. And if you can find anything that is a reality check, rather than listen to the mainstream media, up, down, shake it all about, everything's bad, try and find your own barometers. They're very useful indeed. Not taxi drivers, though. They never rely on them because they just moan like crazy. Now, there's lots being said as we open up about consumer surge. And I think there will be, to an element, that will happen. But some of the figures they're talking about are, at best, unbalanced, is a polite word. So they've got to be very careful what they say here. We need that element of positivity. I get that 100%. But let's make sure, as businessmen and women out there, that we make our own minds up and judgments. We've got figures I was seeing there today between 6 and 12% in terms of the surge in the economy, including the Bank of England, who frankly should know better. Andy Haldane has just gone from the Bank of England to somewhere else. He was looking at a complete V-shape, possibly recovery. And we want this 100%. This isn't me hoping upon the hope that it doesn't happen, despite what we do as a business. We want success, but let's not have misplaced judgment here. What we're not measuring is the base from which they're measuring the any bounce. So if they catch, it's a year-on-year change. Okay, so whatever went on last year in 2020, we were shut, we were open, we were shut, we were open, closing down, we've restricted a bit, etc., etc. Very, very few stable bases to measure anything from. Like I was saying in the last slide there, let's try and make our own minds up here where we think we're going. So a lot of this consumer surge that we're talking about is the figure, I think the last figure banded around, that we've all stored about £180 billion up and we're ready to spend it. I'm sure we are, but it's almost as though we've not spent anything the way they're talking. The high streets are busy. The queues outside Primark are nuts. The one in Belfast went around the block, a big block as well, twice, all for a £6 pair of jeans. So, but we've been spending. Amazon's been there, right? Amazon's been there. Everything online. It's changed our whole consumer behavior. I now don't order anything heavy. Sorry, I only order anything heavy. So I like sparkling water. What's the point of me carrying 6 bottles of that through town if Amazon can deliver it for the same price? Same with wine. I only now buy wine online. If you can do your major shop, and we've got used to that now. Okay, and it's going to be forever going to be the way. Takeaways. Will we go back and want to be fed and watered in restaurants and served to them? Sure, there'll be a place for it, but we now know if we pick up the phone, there's a pizza in half an hour, and some very, very good food being delivered as well. No disrespect to pizza lovers. So it's big changes going on, and we need to make sure we get that. And I say, I implore you, make your own secure your own findings. Find out what is going on. We're all good communicators because we wouldn't be in business. A little point here as well is unemployment, the wrong labour market. So we as an economy, and I think most worldwide economies have been slow on the uptake, particularly when it comes to paying people in hospitality. Invariably, they're on the minimum wage or minimum living wage, whatever you want to call it. And consequently, we don't treat people very well in that. We expect a brilliant service, but they're paid next to nothing. And we've got a lot of people, I think, trapped in that hospitality area there, which is going to be very fickle going forward. It's going to have to be to survive. It can't be, I'm going to put on a full quota of staff away, just see how it goes, because they don't know how things are going to develop. So, and then we haven't got enough, for instance, tech. I know we haven't got enough tradesmen, which is going to come to another issue in a minute when we start looking at inflation. So our unemployment is out of sync. I think it's going to rise, unfortunately, but only because we have the wrong type of labour market. Now, hopefully, but I'm not holding my breath, the government will very quickly develop training programs and not make noise and come up with lovely images and beautiful names of training schemes. Rich, if you're listening, I know you're not, just get on with it. Get some proper training, especially our younger people. I'm a man of a certain age, so I can say that. That's very important, socially, first and foremost, mental health, whatever you want to call it, but for the labour market to reconfigure after what's been going on. Because if there is a surge, we've got to meet it as well. So it's, I think it's going to be a little bit of a pain, that one. There's something on a previous webinar where we discussed the K recovery, which is people who are quite wealthy do okay. People at the bottom of the social chain are going to struggle more, which isn't good for society. I'm not a communist by any stretch, but that's not right. And always follow America. We always follow America. We're always behind them, and we're always slower than them to do anything. We're slower out of lockdown. We'll be slower to get on with things. When things start to go wrong, they cut and run in a good way and get on with the next surge. We love to take our time, pontificate, not sure, could do, would do. Oh, it's happened now, what do I do? In the last crash, America tied itself up in about 3 or 4 years. In Belfast and the South and everything else, that's still going on. Not to such a degree, but it took at least 6 or 7 years. And so we've just, again, a good trend to find out, to follow, is what's going on in America. And we'll come back to that, particularly on our friends in America on inflation. This slide, basic as it is, gives an indication of the old style finance facing SMEs and the new style, and the problems that will bring as and when businesses start to struggle. So the old style there, we have, on your left-hand column there is more your personal sort of sides of debt, and the right-hand side is more the business sides of debt. But the salient factor is you nearly had every part of your finances with one bank. You had your personal credit card, you had the mortgage, you had your car loan for the kids, you had credit card, your current account. Then on the business side, you had everything with it. Now, with the advent of fintech, peer-to-peers, etc., you've got an amazing mix. Good in many ways, but for SMEs who have, for want of a better phrase, overindulged here in terms of types of debt, you've got problems. So some of these, I'm giving you a bit of an example of what I do. So in terms of fintech, I have a Monzo and a Tide card, and I have a Barclays for, I think it pays Spotify or something. It's garbage compared to what they can do with your phone and like. Various mortgage lenders, rarely, if you've got a couple of buy-to-lets, it's all the same mortgage company, that'll be strange. A plethora of credit cards. Credit cards just pop up all over the place. And all they're trying to do by business is getting all the best deals, as we say there. PCP, for all it's another huge problem, I think, coming down the track. But the whole family could have cars on PCP, and you could have 4 cars, say, for 1,200 quid a month. So you've got that. In the business side, more importantly from our angle, what we're talking here, you can get a platform debt for every form of debt you have in your business. Now, I put in brackets there a figure of 23. And what happened there is a business we were trying to help, a software company. They had 23 different types of fintech loan. Not types, sorry, companies. And when we were sat with these gentlemen in one instance, they were given unsolicited from one of their existing suppliers, another 25. Phone literally went bing, 25 grand landed in. Strange enough, that one went completely wrong. But 23 creditors, all with differing needs and requirements, and agendas, which we'll come to in a minute, will cause problems undoubtedly. 3 or 4 will do that. So it's important to understand the toxic mix that comes from these sort of debts as well, because they've all got, repeat myself, very different agendas. You still may have your clearing bank. They still may be a legacy sort of account you had there, which is handy enough. That's cool. And then you've got any number of clearing accounts that you can have online. Monzo, Tide and Starling I've put there. And they're actually the quickest ones to open. Trying to modify anything on a bank mandate, add somebody to it, open a new company with one of the big 4 in the high street, absolute nightmare. It's almost like they don't want the business. And don't get me started on customer care there. So the basic measure is old school. It was one problem. Now it's as many problems as you have types and different companies of debt. So we're just going to quickly look here at the issues in the mix now. So COVID, as we said earlier, generally means there's more debt around us. If you had a peer-to-peer loan, say of 100 grand, you and a PG thereon, you could have topped that up within reason to any amount, obviously subject to due diligence, to wherever you want it to be. 250 grand plus attracted a PG. So there's a lot going there. But whatever you look at it, in the main, businesses either had to or could get some more debt on. Sibbles and bibbles, Rishi has done the Treasury has done a good job there in terms of finance rates and levels, but whatever way you address it, it's still more debt. And you get the relative short-term benefit. And if that's been mopped up, trying to keep everything going, trying to do the right thing by giving some to the landlord, paying your staff top up on top of the 80% of furlough, etc., it soon gets mopped up. Sounded great. In terms of the Civils and Bibbles webinar we did recently, one of the things we said there, we thought it should have been a close down loan, because bounce back suggests it was going to be one go and we're out. And a bit of interruption was called, but it wasn't. Businesses closed, the economy closed for months on end on each instance, which in hindsight, we should have had more of it, but hindsight is a wonderful thing. Then we mentioned earlier, particularly with Luke Johnson's reference to companies with pre-existing conditions prior to COVID-19, and they would have had issues before then and still carry those, plus possibly more, which is tricky. Lockdowns, this isn't an accusation or saying people hid, but undoubtedly some people spent the last 12 months or so with their fingers in there going, la, 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 there is no problem, I can't hear anything. The phone stopped. Rishi wouldn't allow landlords to do what they wanted to do, as I said. And generally, creditors were frustrated. We'll come on in a minute. That frustration, I think, will boil over soon, as and when the courts open in earnest and leave our dear friends the solicitors the ability to go out to get people, as they have to, as appointed by the clients, and earn fees, which it's been tough for solicitors. I'm sure not many of you lose sleep over that, but it's been very tough for solicitors. Music stopped, repeating ourselves, but it has. This is reality time. Businesses have to find out where they are. They have to do some form of sensitivity analysis to see what level of business they can survive at. If they can't survive in their current form, there isn't any point unless you can find a solution, smaller premises, just going online and pulling out the high street, easier said than done, and say into an industrial unit and going on to Shopify and eBay, etc. We're going to go a little bit more in the next slide, or next couple of slides, where we're looking at a few more actuals. So we see a lot more pressure coming to bear in 2022. So here we are in May 21, 7 months to go. It's going to come on now anyway, but early 2022. And I know a couple of large insolvency practitioner firms who are geared. They have to, in a sad way, project when it's going to go wrong so they can gear up their staff requirements, etc. And the general consensus is that it's going to be early 2022 when it sort of gets very ugly. In terms of a local market for us, where we cover all the UK, we cover Europe, but in terms of our local market in Belfast, there the courts are being more or less completely closed, but they're opening in earnest in September. So we will have that there. That will then manifest into terms of more and more issues in 2022. The toxic mix of debt, I'm going to do a little bit more on the slide, but as we said there, if you've got different lenders with different agendas, all seeking different outcomes for their own selfish ends, quite understandably, then that's when it becomes toxic. And right at the beginning of the slide, as I said, the presentation, I said, this is our job. Our job is to understand what's going on. And that's what we're trying to relay here. We're not going, we know everything. These are our experiences. And we're sharing them because we think it's the right thing to do, to share information, especially to people that are in SMEs and those struggling with the pressure of debt. This isn't as patronizing as it looks, the title, because creditors in the main have been very good. If you think about the HMRC, if you think about landlords frustrated or otherwise, they've had to be on hold, so bless them, right? They're going to come back roaring here, though. We have to be ready for the pent-up fury, anger, everything else. Everybody's got different agendas here. A landlord may sound as though he's a well-heeled, wealthy individual, but you're seeing covenants, rents, capital values plummet. If you've got any lender around any commercial property, you have to be very careful in terms of banking covenants. There'll be certain things where the rents should cover a certain percentage of the repayments and things like this. So there are so many different agendas. And it's a case of, again, repeating myself, checking the viability of the business. If the landlord is adamant he wants every single penny of his arrears and he's got a personal guarantee against you and there's no talking, that has to be sorted first. That's the main agenda. But in the same instances, if you're not going to stop because you're on 60 days, not 30 days, despite your best efforts to pull the Sybil's and Bibbles loans in, you've got a problem. So it's, if you then got a peer-to-peer loan, a funding circle, Woke, whoever, they're going to take you back off your half payments, problem again. So it's the different agendas. The next 4 items here, I see this as where the pressure is going to come first. So peer-to-peer lending, fintech, whatever you want to call it, is going to have a rough time here. It's got its own legacy issues in terms of some of the earlier businesses that was written. Most of it is backed on typical business loans are on the back of a PG, and they're going to be fighting for their own survival. We're already seeing a few of the guys that didn't have the best governance in the world quickly falling by the wayside. So we've had Lendy, there was one last week, the House Crowd, as I mentioned there, and more will follow. Some of the levels of due diligence were pretty poor. And their usual response is go full on litigation, whatever form that takes. In England, what they usually try and do is take most cases in England, shove them into the county court and see how they go. Not a lot of discussion. And I don't think in the medium to long term, that's going to do them any favors at all. What they're trying to do, a lot of them, is get their judgment quickly moved to charging land. Then if it does go wrong, they've got their charging first, and so they're okay. They're not too open for discussion. So we're saying, well, you've got to be careful there, because if this does go wrong, you could have preferred your position. But it's where we are. Very quick on the back of that, we're seeing asset finance providers being a lot more short-term in their decisions. So there used to be a little bit of latitudes up to 3 months, but as soon as they're starting to see any hiccups now, they're all over it. And if they need to recover any kit that's associated to a lease, say, and or say invoice discounting, they're quick to act, put administrators in to try and protect their position. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that as we start to go back into reality. There may have been calls so far who will work with you and all that sort of stuff, but if it doesn't come around too quickly, they've got to protect their position. So they would try and secure, say, physically a digger or a tractor against the invoice discounters and the debtor book there. The ogre of the HMRC is there. Again, Rishi's held them back. They've still got to get on and do the job. And there's got to be some recovery of this backlog in terms of the ability to defer. The reason they're slightly further down the food chain in this list here is that they're not the quickest always to get their act together in terms of recovery. They're unrelenting in coming after you, but the two classes of debt above, I would suggest, are far more aggressive. And then even slower, our experience at the moment is that the conventional banks, the Barclays, the high street guys, they are very slow in what they do. And you have the ability with fintechs to quickly re-establish new accounts if you need to, should you fall out with them. That's not advice. It's what you got to do to survive in some instances. And it'll be, in our world, interesting how conventional banks particularly look to recover Sybil's and Bibbles, because at the moment, they're not great at what they do. They're a bit like the HMRC. They're unrelenting, but sometimes the enthusiasm for business in any sense seems to suggest that it's a bit of a nuisance, and they go rather charging you 20 quid for being overdrawn or 29% on a credit card. They're almost like the lowest hanging fruit. Business debt, as we know, can be quite complex. Some of the creditors as well will actually face, in our opinion, survival issues. And that's particularly in the peer-to-peer market. And speaking to somebody yesterday who's a bit of a player in the debt purchase market, and he's got his eye on quite a few books that are going on here, and he's doing a lot of research. He's sort of guided by books of, say, about 200 million. And he sees quite a few problems here. This isn't us digging, by the way. Brokers, if you start saying, oh, peer-to-peer are the same, they've been brilliant for what they've done for the economy, especially after the last crash. But let's call them for what they are, okay? They're brokers. They've written a book. Some of it's very complicated. As is, they don't seem quite ready to deal with grief when books start to go wrong. But we'll see. These different agendas are usually manifest themselves in the level of aggression from the creditors in how they approach things. These could be, some of them are going straight for stat demands, the precursor to bankruptcy. Some are going to county court summonses. And it suggests that their agenda is led by that. If their book's under pressure, they're going to react to get as much as they can, as quickly as they can, and rely, not ideally, in my opinion, on the courts and the legal process. There's different ways of doing things. I think they're missing tricks here. But that's not my call. That's obviously, they have their way to approach things. So we're getting towards the end here, right? There's a couple. Just this one here is a little. This slide here is how we view it will pan out, and we're just giving almost like 6 and 9 month views as we go down the track. First one is fabricated search, right? So that's back to the 6-12%, whatever the figure is, right? Great. We want to do well. I get that. I'll repeat myself there, but it's relatively short term, I think. Okay, the courts will open. That's going to slow down businesses, and we're going to get angry litigators now coming through as well. So we may get some consumer search. Undoubtedly, there'll be scenes on social media on the first day. We can go to pubs, people staggering around as though nothing had happened, etc., etc. But how long will that last? So we see that most likely the rest of the year, Christmas, New Year, bookings of holidays. But for SMEs, the pressure will come on in stage 2 there. Early 2022 is our view, and far more learned people than me, for sure, are coming up with those sort of dates where it's going to get a wee bit ugly. Reality will come seriously into play. You'll have had restaurants and pubs who will go into their traditionally quiet period. So, very often they need a fair bit of fat on them to carry them through that time. And they've got the legacy debt. Courts will clear, and that will start letting litigation come back in full flow. Honeymoon's over, which is a strange phrase, but it's in terms of the ability to survive with the support of the government and the ability to hide. And will Sybil's and Bibbles be repaid? I personally see Bibbles as nothing more than a grant scheme that Rishi put, say, half of the money put into Bibbles is a grant scheme just to shove it straight into the economy. And to a degree, it's worked and kept things going. So I'm not going to call him out morally on that, but let's call it for what it is. Then more worrying, most likely the end part of next year, although it's becoming more and more apparent even as we speak, in terms of inflation. Very few people, not very few people, people of a certain age would have experienced inflation. And the only tool really to deal with inflation is interest rates. And since the last crash, essentially, we've had record low, consistently low interest rates. So that's a fear there. And prices, I think, are going to fairly rocket here. And I think it's going to take some holding because there are lots of mitigating factors. The US, I was on a couple of courses there, one in the States, and they are, excuse my parlance, they're shit scared of inflation and they think it's there. And it's starting to come in various different forms. I've noticed a couple down here. There's the recovery. The surge itself will create inflation because there's more demand for goods. And it's a natural thing of all businesses. If you've got the surge and you've got the thing, test the price upwards. You've got pre-COVID recovery thing I put there. I'll give you a very simple example. A pub across the way there from me, his prices have gone up 18%. Prior COVID, it was $3.90 a pint. Now it's $4.60. And if I want a pint, that's what I'm going to pay it. So there's that. There is a shortage in the world at the minute for computer chips, not potato chips, computer chips. Massively important to the world's economy at the minute. And obviously our reliance on all the electronic devices that we need rely on. Huge thing. Oil, whilst low at about $70 a barrel, there is going to be some pent-up fury. And in terms of the price, and then you're going to get OPEC and the like. They've been taking poor money in America. The shale market there has been on its backside. So you're going to get oil prices rising. Steel, there's a shortage, full stop. We're through COVID in the main, construction's been very strong. Infrastructure projects are going to rise as the government spend this cash they've raised. And what the other danger we have, which was exemplified in a strange way by the boat that got stuck in the Suez Canal, is many major industries are working on just-in-time stock holdings. By that, I mean, they don't carry warehouses full. They carry what they require for a month. And suddenly a boat, as big as it was, getting stuck in the Suez caused all sorts of grief for a week. And we're not wishing anything bad in this world, but if a boat gets stuck in the Suez can do that, then that's, it shows what a fragile world we live in terms of that. So one way or another, inflation's coming. Plus, I nearly forgot, the dear governments of the world, America taking $3 trillion, we're taking $500 billion, At some point, they're going to have to pay more for it. Governments also need inflation to knock down this level of debt. Inflation over time will erode this debt that, say, Rishi's run up now. Anyway, that's me wittering on a fair bit. Main thing from it is we're reinforcing that message, the toxic nature of debt and how SME copes coming out of the recession, it's not there yet, out of COVID-19 is important. So that's why in our next webinar, which we're saying there, we're going to be looking, is your business model viable? We're looking at the main component element, of a business structure, sales price, margin, overheads. And again, not in a patronizing way, but people have really got to look at what they're doing. We've got a lady, we've got some successes in this as well. We've got a lady there who has a wedding dress shop, and we were quite tough with the supplier and gave them all the stock back. The landlord was very aggressive. We came to a settlement with him ultimately. We got a guy who had a gym, loads of gym equipment wrapped around him, literally in terms of asset finance. And he went off to Spain and is doing very well. Didn't do a runner, but has gone and made money in a decent way with all his without his costs hanging around him. So we're going to bring a little bit of our experiences. That's what this is about, our experiences. We're nearly a bit of a bellwether. We don't know everything, but we're fairly learned in how we approach things here. So I'm going to draw it to a close there. If there are any questions, comments, criticisms, please contact us wherever you want on those various mediums there. I'm Terry Bell from Bell & Company. Thanks for your time. Hopefully it's some use to you. It's a tricky old world. But anyway, have a great Friday and a good weekend, and I'll see you later. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye.